Welcome to Gripping Tales. Are you ready for today's video? It starts now.
Let me tell you about Rachel Chen, a woman who thought she knew exactly who she was until a bathroom mirror proved her completely wrong. So it's Monday morning, September 12th, and Rachel is walking into the gleaming glass tower that houses Meridian Industries for her first day as senior marketing executive. At 31, she's finally landed her dream job at one of the city's most prestigious consulting firms. Great salary, corner office potential, and the kind of corporate benefits package that makes your friends jealous. Rachel had always been ambitious, the type who color-coded her planners, arrived 15 minutes early to everything, and actually read those corporate mission statements that most people ignore. She'd worked her ass off to get here, climbing the ladder from junior positions at smaller firms, networking until her business card collection could fill a small library. This is it, she told herself as she stepped into the marble-floored lobby, designer heels clicking with confidence. This is where I prove I belong in the big leagues. The Meridian building was everything you'd expect from a Fortune 500 company, all glass and steel, with that sterile modern aesthetic that screamed serious business. Expensive art on the walls, reception desks that probably cost more than most people's cars, and elevators so smooth you barely felt them moving. Rachel's new supervisor, Janet Morrison, met her in the lobby. Janet was the epitome of corporate professionalism. Perfectly styled blonde hair, power suit that fit like it was tailored, and the kind of handshake that could crush walnuts. Welcome to Meridian, Rachel. We're thrilled to have you on board. Your reputation precedes you. The Henderson account campaign you ran at your last firm was absolutely brilliant. As they rode the elevator up to the 17th floor, Janet gave her the standard new employee tour. Marketing department takes up most of this floor. Your office is down the hall from mine. Conference room B is where we hold our Monday morning strategy sessions. Oh, and the employee bathroom is just around the corner. Might seem trivial, but trust me, you'll appreciate knowing where it is during those long meeting days. Rachel's office was everything she'd hoped for. Large windows overlooking the city, modern furniture, and a view that made her feel like she was on top of the world. Her nameplate was already on the door. Rachel Chen, Senior Marketing Executive. Seeing her name in corporate font on a door made everything feel real. You'll love it here, Janet said with that practiced corporate smile. Meridian takes care of its people. We're not just colleagues. We're family. That phrase, we're family, should have been Rachel's first red flag. In corporate speak, that usually means they'll work you to death while guilting you into thinking it's for your own good. But Rachel was riding high on new job excitement. She spent her first morning setting up her office, reviewing client files, and getting familiar with Meridian's marketing strategies. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect really, but Rachel chalked that up to finally landing at a company that had its act together. It was around 10:30 a.m. when nature called, and Rachel made her first trip to the employee bathroom. Nothing fancy. Standard corporate restroom with those automatic sensors for everything, harsh fluorescent lighting, and the kind of industrial-grade paper towels that could probably sand wood. But it was the mirror that caught Rachel's attention. Not because there was anything obviously wrong with it, quite the opposite. It was just different. Cleaner than you'd expect in an office bathroom. The reflection was incredibly crisp, almost HD quality. Like looking at herself through a high-definition camera rather than regular glass. Damn, this lighting actually makes me look good, Rachel muttered, checking her appearance before heading back to work. But as she turned to leave, something in her peripheral vision made her pause. In the mirror's reflection, she could see the bathroom door behind her. Except, the door was different. Instead of the standard office door with its employees only sign, the reflected door had a red placard that read, Authorized personnel only. Level 7 clearance required. Rachel turned around to look at the actual door. Nope, just the regular employee bathroom sign. She looked back at the mirror. The red sign was still there in the reflection. Okay, that's weird, she said aloud, feeling a little silly for talking to herself in a bathroom mirror. Must be some kind of optical illusion. Maybe the mirror is positioned at an angle that's reflecting something from another floor? Rachel rationalized it away. After all, what was the alternative? That mirrors were showing alternate realities? That was ridiculous. She was probably just nervous about the new job, maybe seeing things that weren't there. But as she washed her hands and prepared to leave, she caught another glimpse in the mirror that made her blood run cold. Standing behind her in the reflection was a man in a lab coat. Rachel spun around. The bathroom was empty. She looked back at the mirror. Nothing. Just her own pale, suddenly terrified face staring back. Get it together, Rachel, she whispered. First day jitters. That's all this is. But her hands were shaking as she dried them, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The man in the lab coat had looked so real, so detailed. She could even remember the ID badge clipped to his pocket, though she hadn't been able to read the name. Rachel hurried back to her office, diving into work with the kind of desperate focus that comes from trying not to think about something disturbing. She had client presentations to review, marketing strategies to analyze, and a departmental meeting at 2 p.m. that she needed to prepare for. For the next few hours, she managed to convince herself that the mirror incident had been her imagination. Stress, new environment, maybe too much caffeine. Perfectly rational explanations for what was obviously just a case of first-day nerves. But at 1:45, when she went back to the bathroom to freshen up before the meeting, the mirror showed her something that shattered her rational explanations completely. This time, when Rachel looked in the mirror, she saw herself, but not herself. The reflection showed her wearing completely different clothes. Instead of her navy business suit, mirror Rachel was wearing a hospital gown. Instead of her professional makeup and styled hair, mirror Rachel looked exhausted, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. And worst of all, mirror Rachel was looking directly at real Rachel with an expression of desperate terror, mouthing words that real Rachel couldn't hear. "Help me." Rachel stumbled backward from the mirror, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. This wasn't stress. This wasn't imagination. This was something else entirely. Something that challenged everything she thought she knew about reality. Okay, she said aloud, trying to calm herself down. There's gotta be a logical explanation for this. Mirrors don't just show alternate realities. That's not how physics works. But even as she said it, Rachel found herself creeping back toward the mirror. She had to know, had to see if it would happen again. The reflection looked normal now. Just Rachel in her navy suit, looking appropriately professional if a bit pale. Nothing out of the ordinary. She waved at her reflection. Mirror Rachel waved back normally. She made faces. Mirror Rachel made the same faces. Everything was working exactly as a mirror should work. "I'm losing my mind," Rachel whispered. First day at a new job and I'm having a complete psychological breakdown in the bathroom. But then she noticed something else. In the corner of the mirror, barely visible, was what looked like a small camera, just a tiny black dot, the kind of security camera you might not notice unless you were really looking for it. Rachel examined the actual bathroom, no camera in the corresponding spot. She looked back at the mirror. The camera was definitely there in the reflection. What the hell is going on here? Rachel decided she needed help. This was beyond anything she could figure out on her own. She pulled out her phone and called her best friend Maya, a software engineer who was logical, practical, and completely no-nonsense when it came to weird situations. "Maya, I need you to talk me down from a complete freakout." "Okay, what's wrong? And please tell me you didn't already manage to get fired on your first day." "I think the bathroom mirror at my new office is showing me alternate realities." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Rachel, honey, are you feeling all right? Did you eat anything weird for breakfast? Take any new medications?" "I'm serious, Maya." "The mirror is showing me things that aren't there. Different signs on doors, people who aren't in the room even a different version of myself." "Okay, let's think about this rationally. Mirrors are just reflective surfaces. They can't show alternate realities because alternate realities don't exist. What you're probably experiencing is a hallucination. I know, that's what I thought too. But Maya, I can see details. Specific, consistent details. There's a security camera in the mirror that doesn't exist in the actual bathroom." Maya sighed. "Look, new job stress is real. Your brain might be processing anxiety in weird ways. Why don't you just avoid that bathroom for the rest of the day? Use one on a different floor." That actually seemed like good advice. Rachel thanked Maya and hung up, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than stress-induced hallucinations. She spent the rest of her first day using the bathroom on the 16th floor. Everything was normal there. Regular mirrors that showed regular reflections. No mysterious lab coat men or alternate versions of herself. But that night, Rachel couldn't stop thinking about what she'd seen. She researched everything she could find about mirrors, optical illusions, stress-induced hallucinations, and even paranormal activity. None of it provided a satisfactory explanation. The next morning, Rachel arrived at work determined to solve the mystery. She brought a small handheld mirror from her purse. If the bathroom mirror was somehow defective or rigged, a comparison with a normal mirror should reveal the difference. At 10:30 a.m., she entered the 17th floor bathroom with scientific determination. The regular handheld mirror showed her normal reflection. The bathroom mirror showed her wearing that hospital gown again, but this time she wasn't alone. Standing behind Mirror Rachel was Janet Morrison, but not the Janet Morrison from Rachel's reality. This Janet was wearing the same type of lab coat as the mysterious man from the day before, and she was holding what looked like a clipboard with medical charts. Mirror Janet was examining Mirror Rachel like a doctor would examine a patient. And both Mirror Rachel and Mirror Janet seemed to be in some kind of medical facility rather than an office bathroom. "This is impossible," Rachel whispered. But as she watched, Mirror Janet looked up from her clipboard and made direct eye contact with real Rachel through the mirror. Mirror Janet's lips moved, and though Rachel couldn't hear the words, she was excellent at reading lips from years of watching foreign films without subtitles. Mirror Janet was saying, "Subject 31 is becoming aware. Increase the dosage." Rachel felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Subject 31? Dosage? What kind of medical experiment was she supposedly part of? She stumbled out of the bathroom and went straight to her office, her mind racing. Nothing made sense. She worked for a marketing consulting firm, not a medical research facility. Janet Morrison was her supervisor, not some kind of doctor or researcher. Unless everything she thought she knew about her job, her life, her reality was wrong. Rachel forced herself to think logically. If what she was seeing in the mirror was real, and that was a big if, then there were only a few possible explanations. 1. His head. She was having a complete psychotic break and hallucinating elaborate alternate realities. 2. The mirror was somehow showing her parallel dimensions. 3. Her current reality was fake, and the mirror was showing her the truth. Options 2 and 3 sounded like science fiction. Option 1 was terrifying but at least scientifically possible. But Rachel had always been thorough in her research, and she decided to treat this like any other problem that needed solving. She would gather evidence, test theories, and find the truth. First, she started paying closer attention to her coworkers. Really paying attention. Janet Morrison, her supervisor, had mentioned that Rachel's reputation from her previous job had preceded her. But when Rachel tried to casually bring up specifics about her past work, Janet's answers were vague, generic, like someone who had read a brief summary but didn't actually know the details. The Henderson campaign was brilliant, Janet had said. But when Rachel tried to discuss the specific challenges they'd faced with that client, Janet quickly changed the subject. Then there was the office layout itself. Rachel started mapping it out, and she realized something odd. There were sections of the 17th floor that seemed to be off-limits to marketing staff. Doors marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Hallways that employees were subtly directed away from. During her lunch break, Rachel decided to do some corporate espionage. She took the elevator to different floors, pretending to be lost or looking for someone. What she found was disturbing. The lower floors, 1st through 10th, looked like a normal consulting firm. Marketing departments, accounting, human resources, conference rooms full of people in business suits having normal corporate meetings. But the higher floors were different. Starting around the 15th floor, Rachel began seeing more of those "Authorized Personnel Only" signs. She caught glimpses of rooms that looked more like laboratories than offices. People in lab coats walking around with clipboards and medical equipment. And on the 20th floor, which she managed to reach by claiming she was looking for the accounting department, Rachel saw something that made her blood freeze. Through a partially open door, she could see a room full of hospital beds. And in those beds were people who looked exactly like the employees from the lower floors, people who looked exactly like her coworkers. But they were all unconscious, hooked up to IV drips and monitoring equipment. Rachel quickly backed away and took the elevator down, her mind reeling. What she had seen was impossible, but she couldn't unsee it. That afternoon, she found an excuse to visit Janet's office. She needed to test a theory. "Janet, I'm curious about Meridian's history. How long has the company been in business?" "Oh, quite a while now. We've been helping businesses with their marketing strategies for many years." "And you've been here how long?" "Long enough to know that Meridian takes care of its people," Janet said with that same practiced smile. "We're not just colleagues, we're family." Same phrase, exact same intonation, like she was reading from a script. "What did you do before working at Meridian?" For just a moment, Janet's expression flickered. Confusion crossed her face, like she was trying to remember something that should have been easy to recall. I've always worked here. Meridian has always been my home." That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the hospital beds, Janet's scripted responses, and most of all, the message she'd lip-read from Mirror Janet. Subject 31 is becoming aware. If Rachel was subject 31, then what exactly was she a subject of? The next morning, Rachel arrived at work with a plan. She was going to document everything the mirror showed her, take photos if possible, and gather concrete evidence of what was happening. She brought her phone, a small notebook, and even a tape measure. If the mirror was showing her alternate dimensions, maybe there would be measurable differences in the reflected space. At 10:30 a.m., she entered the bathroom like she was conducting a scientific experiment. The mirror immediately showed her the hospital room version of reality. Mirror Rachel was in the hospital gown, connected to various machines, and this time there were multiple people in lab coats examining her. Rachel quickly started taking notes. 3 people in lab coats, 2 men, 1 woman. Woman appears to be in charge. Hospital room has at least 6 beds visible. Monitor above bed shows brainwave patterns. She tried taking a photo with her phone, but the camera only captured the normal bathroom reflection. Whatever was causing the mirror phenomenon wasn't being picked up by digital cameras. But as Rachel watched, something incredible happened. Mirror Rachel opened her eyes and looked directly at real Rachel through the mirror. And this time, real Rachel could hear her. "You need to wake up," Mirror Rachel said, her voice somehow coming through the mirror's surface. "This isn't real. None of this is real. You're in the hospital. You've been in the hospital for 3 months. Real Rachel nearly dropped her phone. "What hospital? What are you talking about?" "St. Mary's Medical Center. You were in a car accident. Traumatic brain injury. They said you might never wake up, so they enrolled you in an experimental program." "What kind of experimental program?" Mirror Rachel's image began to flicker, like a television with bad reception. "Virtual reality! Consciousness simulation! They're testing whether coma patients can be kept mentally active through artificial experiences." The image stabilized, and Mirror Rachel continued urgently. "Your memories of getting this job, of moving to this city, of your life for the past 6 months, it's all fabricated, implanted. You're living in a computer simulation designed to keep your brain active while your body heals." Rachel felt like the world was spinning around her. "That's impossible. This feels real. Everything feels real." "Of course it does. That's the point. But look for the glitches, Rachel. Look for the things that don't quite make sense. The scripted conversations. The areas you're not allowed to go. The way people give generic answers when you ask specific questions." As Mirror Rachel spoke, real Rachel began remembering all the odd things she'd noticed. Janet's vague responses about Rachel's past work. The office layout that didn't quite make sense. The way conversations sometimes felt rehearsed. "How do I wake up?" "I don't know. I'm just a part of your subconscious that's trying to break through the simulation." "But the mirror. The mirror is a glitch in the program. It's the one place where your real consciousness can communicate with your simulated consciousness." Suddenly, the mirror image changed completely. Instead of the hospital room, Rachel was looking at Janet Morrison. But this was the real Janet Morrison, not the simulated version. Real Janet was wearing a lab coat and speaking to someone off-screen. "Subject 31's brain activity is spiking. She's showing signs of awareness beyond the program parameters. Should we adjust the simulation?" A man's voice responded, "No, not yet. Let's see how far her consciousness can push against the boundaries. This could be exactly the breakthrough we've been waiting for." Real Janet nodded and began typing on a computer. "I'll increase the complexity of her work environment, give her more challenging tasks, keep her mind occupied, and monitor the mirror glitch. If she's using it to communicate with her deeper consciousness, we need to understand how and why." Rachel backed away from the mirror in horror. They knew. The people running the simulation knew she was becoming aware. And they were treating her awakening consciousness like a fascinating experiment. She was trapped in a virtual reality that was being constantly adjusted and monitored by researchers who saw her not as a person, but as a test subject. Rachel spent the rest of that day in a state of barely controlled panic. Every interaction felt fake. Every conversation seemed scripted. Every detail of her environment looked like it might be artificially generated. When Janet asked how she was settling into her new role, Rachel scrutinized her supervisor's face for any sign of artificiality. The smile was too perfect, the eye contact too steady, the responses too polished. "I'm doing great," Rachel replied, testing. "Though I have to ask, do you remember the first time we met?" Janet's expression flickered again, that same momentary confusion Rachel had noticed before. "Of course I remember. It was when you started working here." "But where exactly? In what room?" "In the lobby. Yes, the lobby." Rachel remembered, meeting Janet at the elevator, not the lobby. The simulation was imperfect. and the programmed responses weren't detailed enough to handle specific questioning. That evening, Rachel went home to her apartment, which now felt like an elaborate movie set rather than her actual home. She began testing everything, looking for glitches, inconsistencies, anything that would prove she was living in a simulation. Her photo albums were filled with pictures that looked real but felt wrong somehow. When she tried to call her parents, the conversation was oddly generic, like talking to customer service representatives reading from scripts. "How's your new job, honey?" her mother asked. "It's fine, Mom, but I wanted to ask you about something. Do you remember when I was little, what was my favorite bedtime story?" There was a pause that lasted just a little too long. "Oh, you loved all the stories I read to you. But which one specifically?" Another pause. The ones with the princess." Rachel's real mother would have immediately said, "The Paper Bag Princess," a story Rachel had demanded every night for 2 years when she was 5. This wasn't her real mother. This was a program trying to simulate maternal conversation without access to specific memories. Rachel hung up and stared at her phone. If her parents were simulated, if her apartment was simulated, if her job was simulated, then how much of her life was real? Well, she needed to get back to the mirror. It was the only place where she could access the truth. But when Rachel tried to leave her apartment, she found the door wouldn't open. The lock wasn't engaged, the door wasn't stuck, but it simply wouldn't budge. Like it was part of a video game, where certain exits were blocked until you completed the right objectives. The windows wouldn't open either. The phone lines went dead when she tried to call anyone outside her programmed contact list. She was trapped in her own apartment, prisoners of a reality that was revealed to be nothing more than sophisticated computer code. Rachel spent that night awake, pacing her artificial living room, trying to find any way to break through the boundaries of her simulation. She threw books at walls, looking for places where the programming might glitch. She tried breaking mirrors, wondering if damaging the reflective surfaces would disrupt the system. Nothing worked. The simulation was too sophisticated, too complete. But the next morning, something had changed. When Rachel woke up, she found a note on her kitchen table written in her own handwriting, "The mirror at 3:17 a.m. She had no memory of writing the note, but the handwriting was definitely hers. Rachel waited. All day at work, she played along with the simulation, attended meetings, responded to emails, acted like the perfect corporate employee. But inside, she was counting down the hours until 3:17 a.m. She stayed late at the office, claiming she had urgent projects to finish. The cleaning crew came and went. The building grew quiet and dark. At 3:15 a.m., Rachel made her way to the bathroom on the 17th floor. The mirror looked different at this hour. Instead of the usual reflection, it showed static, like a television tuned to a dead channel. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the static cleared, and Rachel saw the most detailed vision yet of her true reality. She was lying in a hospital bed, unconscious, surrounded by medical equipment. But she wasn't alone. Standing next to her bed was a man she recognized, but had never seen in her simulated life. Dr. Michael Chen, her older brother. Dr. Chen was speaking to someone off-screen. 3 months of simulation, and her brain activity is stronger than ever. The virtual reality therapy is working better than we hoped. Her mind is completely engaged, creating detailed experiences, even forming new memories. But she's starting to become aware of the simulation, a woman's voice responded. Is that safe? Actually, it's incredible. Her consciousness is so resilient that it's pushing against the boundaries we've created. She's not just passively experiencing the simulation, she's actively questioning it, testing it, trying to break free. Rachel watched in amazement as her brother, her real brother, not a simulated version, checked her vital signs with genuine care and concern. The mirror glitch isn't an accident, Dr. Chen continued. It's her subconscious mind's way of communicating with her conscious mind. She's literally talking to herself across layers of simulated reality. Through the mirror, Rachel could see her real body for the first time in months. She looked pale, thinner, but alive. Very much alive. When can we try waking her up? Soon? Her brain activity suggests she's strong enough now to handle consciousness without the simulation support. But we need to be careful. She's been living in this virtual world for 3 months. Waking up is going to be disorienting and potentially traumatic. As Rachel watched, her brother leaned down and spoke directly to her unconscious form. Rachel, if any part of you can hear this, I want you to know that we're going to bring you home soon. The accident wasn't your fault. Mom and Dad are here every day. Maya visits constantly. Your real life is waiting for you. In the mirror, Rachel saw her unconscious body's fingers twitch slightly. Dr. Chen looked up excitedly. "Did you see that?" She's responding. "She can hear us." Rachel realized with a shock that she could control her real body, even from inside the simulation. She concentrated with everything she had, trying to move her real fingers again. On the monitor next to her hospital bed, her brain activity spiked dramatically. "She's fighting to wake up," Dr. Chen said. "Rachel, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand." Through sheer force of will, Rachel managed to make her real body squeeze her brother's hand. The monitor alarms began going off. Nurses rushed into the room. Dr. Chen was shouting instructions about reducing medication levels and preparing for potential consciousness. And in the bathroom mirror, Rachel watched her real eyes flutter open for the first time in 3 months. As her real eyes opened, her simulated world began to dissolve. The bathroom faded away. The office building crumbled like sand. And Rachel felt herself falling through layers of artificial realities. The last thing she saw in the mirror was her brother's face, tears streaming down his cheeks as he said, "Welcome back, Rachel. Welcome back to the real world." Rachel Chen woke up in St. Mary's Medical Center on a Tuesday morning in December, 3 months after her car accident, with the strangest story about corporate life that no one would ever believe. But sometimes, late at night, she still dreams about mirrors that show different realities, and she wonders if somewhere, in some simulation or parallel dimension, there's still a version of herself working at Meridian Industries, completely unaware that her entire world is nothing more than sophisticated code designed to keep a healing mind occupied. The funny thing is, now that Rachel knows what real corporate life is actually like, she sometimes misses the simulation. At least virtual Janet Morrison never made her work overtime without pay. Sweet dreams, everyone, and remember, if reality ever feels a little too scripted, maybe check the nearest mirror. You never know what truth might be staring back at you.
Thanks for watching. Every ending hides the beginning of another tale, and ours is already on its way. Stay tuned, you'll find the next chapter right here, and soon.